Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today I rise in this House of Commons to speak in opposition to Bill C-15. Not because it's a Liberal budget bill, Madam Speaker, but because it's a betrayal bill. The 634-page monster that they're trying to ram through in unprecedented fashion is hiding some of the most dangerous powers imaginable. Powers that let Liberal ministers pick winners and losers, exempt their corporate buddies from the laws that bind the rest of us, all while Canadian families scrape by with little more than empty promises from these Liberals and skyrocketing bills. Let me paint a picture for this out-of-touch Liberal government. Madam Speaker, right now across the country, mums and dads are staring at grocery receipts that have doubled over the past decade of Liberal inflation. Yes, doubled. That's not hyperbole. Those are the facts. The Canada Food Price Annual Report that was released just last week confirmed it. Over the past 10 years of Liberal rule, food prices have surged. Beef is up 62% just since 2019 alone, and coffee has doubled over the past 6 years. A family of 4 is now shelling out over $17,500 a year just to feed themselves. That's up over $1,000 last year, and it's going to be up another $1,000 in the year to come, the report confirmed. Food has doubled in the past years, but paychecks haven't, Madam Speaker. So Canadians are making sacrifices just to eat. And this budget has nothing for those families. Hungry Canadians are expected to fend for themselves under these Liberals. Families are left to choose between gas in their car or getting milk for the kids. They're skipping meals, rationing protein, watching their hard-earned paychecks evaporate into the Liberal inflation machine. 1 in 4 households are food insecure. 2 million Canadians are lined up at food banks, and that's the Liberal Speaker, Madam Speaker. That's the Liberal legacy, Madam Speaker. A decade of deficits, taxes, and skyrocketing industrial carbon taxes that have hammered the working class, while Liberals cater to their wealthy and well-connected friends. Every year since the Liberals took office, Canadians have become poorer and poorer. First, families saw their savings dwindle, and then they gave up extras like a vacation or concert tickets. And before too long, there was no longer any money for the kids' hockey or ballet. But now, Madam Speaker, families can't afford the essentials anymore, like their mortgage, their rent, their heating in their home, or food. But while families are tightening their belts, this Prime Minister is preoccupied with his Brookfield bondholder and banker buddies. He's inserted into this omnibus behemoth the 634-page Bill C-15, a provision that hands his cabinet ministers a golden key to unlock any federal law for his favorite companies or buddies. A law, with the exception of the criminal code. It doesn't exempt the criminal code because I guess, Madam Speaker, Liberals draw a line at giving a free pass for things like kidnapping, theft, or murder. But everything else is up for a get-out-of-jail-free card. Madam Speaker, exemptions from environmental protections, transportation safety rules, tax remittances, labor standards, you name it, all gone for anyone that they decide. And it's all justified with buzzwords like innovation and competitiveness. If they decide that someone or some company shouldn't have to abide by the law, they won't have to. And who decides if this bill is passed? The Prime Minister or one of his ministers, alone, in secret, based on their own fuzzy definition of what they call, quote-unquote, the public interest. No parliamentary debate, no transparency, no oversight. Taxpayers will foot the bill for whatever mess they create or whatever goes wrong. and their well-connected friends or companies, they're off the hook. Tough luck for average Canadians. Think about it, Madam Speaker. Your average Canadian entrepreneur, the small business owner, has to jump through all of the hoops to get their business started or to expand their enterprise. Environmental assessments, CRA audits, safety certifications, the works. But some Bay Street giant, somebody of the Prime Minister, well, they just whisper in the minister's ear, and poof, exempt. Exempt from taxes that everybody else is expected to pay, from consultations that everybody else is expected to do, exempt from fishery quotas, exempt from workplace safety regs, exempt from environmental regulations, exempt, exempt, exempt. Now, Madam Speaker, let me be clear. I agree with those who legitimately say that these Liberals have made Canada uncompetitive with the rest of the world. It's true. Ask any entrepreneur these days, and they'll tell you that they agree that it's nearly impossible to keep a business alive in this country anymore. Liberals have added too much red tape, too much in taxes, too many forms, too many regulations, too many rules, too many reports, too many restrictions, too many, Madam Speaker. But that's why that is why, Madam Speaker, we've seen an implosion of the small business sector across this country with unprecedented closures and bankruptcies from coast to coast. But the solution can't be that we give a special free pass to Liberal friends by continuing to overburden everybody else. That's truly picking winners and losers, like a Russian oligarch that has special privileges while everybody else pays the price. Canadians know that we all must be equal under the law. This cronyism is dangerous. It violates Canadian values, and it will destroy this country. The Liberals know that this is wrong, and that's why they hid this provision deep in the 634-page omnibus bill. Why an omnibus bill? Well, because they know that scrutiny is the enemy of corruption. Liberals used to proudly herald that omnibus bills were a violation of democracy. They called them Trojan horses. Madam Speaker, I think you'll remember those days. They promised to never do it. But here we are, with a bill that evades Parliament like a thief in the night. Division 5 of Part 5 amends the Red Tape Reduction Act to let ministers grant these temporary get-out-of-jail-free cards for regulatory sandboxes. Regulatory sandboxes, that sounds kind of innocent until you realize that it's a license to print favors, and companies are going to line up to ask for them. They talk about it being for innovation. Well, let's understand that what we'll get is rent-seeking, big players gaming the system and stifling real competition if these provisions are passed. The same judge and jury that decides if an exemption was appropriate will also be the same minister deciding the exemption. Common sense says that if a law is bad, if it stifles development or innovation, repeal it for everybody. A democracy is no longer a democracy if some citizens or corporations can evade the law without parliamentary say. This is a power grab, Madam Speaker. It's not progress, and it stinks. Now let's talk about the man at the top, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister. The golden boy of global finance is now supposed to be Canada's champion. But here's the kicker. He still has skin in the game with Brookfield Asset Management. Share options, deferred units, and potentially tens of millions in carried interest from funds that he set up. Payments that will mature in 2032 and 2034, long after he's maybe even out of office. He chaired the board, launched their green transition funds, and this is where Brookfield will win big. Carney will cash in.
knows we cannot use current members' names in the chamber.
You're right, Madam Speaker. The Prime Minister will cash in.
Hold the member on the point of order, yes? Yeah. The honourable member for Hamilton.
Continuing to make false and defamatory statements against an identifiable member.
That is a matter for debate, and I'm not going to rule on that. The honourable member for
Madam Speaker, it's not just me that's calling out this bill for what it is. Democracy Watch called it a direct and significant financial conflict.
And I'm sorry, we're way over time. Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I found it very distasteful. In fact, quite frankly, when I listened to what the member said, he wants to feed into some sort of anger and generate anger. There is no corruption. There's a lot of transparency. There's a whole lot of accountability. Maybe the Conservative Party needs to look in the mirror, quite frankly. Because if they really and truly believed half of what they said, this bill would have passed to a committee stage where it could have been broken down, where you would have numerous standing committees dealing with it. There's nothing that's being hidden here other than a Conservative agenda which is purely self-interested, where they have character assassination and make allegations that they cannot support. Madam Speaker, it's disgusting, and the member should be ashamed of himself.
The member for Grand Prairie.
Well, Madam Speaker, you know when you are above the target. When they send in the member from Winnipeg North to yell and scream and claim that he's hard done by. That's when we know that we're hovering over the target. Madam Speaker, I have met with families that can no longer afford to pay for the essentials. Heartbreakingly, it's a larger number than ever. And the honourable member will know these same stories. But I can tell you that what they also see is a free pass given again and again under these Liberals to their corporate friends, massive bail. He says, prove it, Madam Speaker. He's heckling, prove it. I can tell the honourable member. Look at the Stellantis contract. Was there a protection for Canadians as the Liberals dished out billions of dollars for their corporate friends? Absolutely not. When you look at the Algoma deal, 1,000 layoffs this past week, hundreds of millions of dollars being handed over to the company with no guarantee for the 1,000 people that have lost their job, Madam Speaker. What we see under this Liberal Party again...
Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments. The honourable member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for that excellent speech. Madam Speaker, it's a little rich to hear Liberal colleagues in this chamber talk about accountability and transparency when they're presenting a budget implementation bill for a budget that was supposed to be begun April 1 last year, this year. Okay, the better part of 8 months has already transpired, Madam Speaker. Now they want to try. They want us to vote on a budget after they've already spent 8 months of the money. So my question to the honourable member is this. Does he think it is normal for a parliament or any organization to budget after they've spent the money?
Honourable member for Grand Prairie.
Madam Speaker, my colleague points out exactly the hypocrisy of this party that claims to believe in transparency. I remember a time when they talked about sunlight being the best in disinfectant, and yet what we're seeing is a government that is clouded by more secrecy than we've ever seen any government before. But they're not trying to rectify it as they're being called out for being secretive. They're actually included now in this very bill that we're debating before the House right now. Division 5, Part 5, clearly articulates the ability for ministers to, in the darkness of night, to sign provisions to give exemptions to federal law for their buddies. Madam Speaker, this is not democratic. And there'll be no oversight for these provisions. There'll be no accountability. It will be done. Canadians will have to pay for it.
Questions and comments. The
Honourable Member for La Pointe de Lille. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like my colleague's opinion on the fact that in C15, the media crisis will get even worse. Before, There was meant to be a foreign digital news tax. It was meant to be applied, 3%. Billions could have been raised with this, but then it was taken away. This could have helped the Canadian media landscape, but the Prime Minister wanted to placate Mr. Trump and so reneged on that tax. So a simple question. It's a question of budgetary policy as well. American platforms don't pay taxes in Canada, but a Quebec and Canadian platform will pay taxes. What does my colleague have to say about the whole situation?
The Honourable Member for Grand Prairie.
Well, Madam Speaker, my friend articulates this Prime Minister's failure to get a deal with the Americans. Obviously, the Prime Minister made a promise to get a trade deal with the Americans. By July, he has failed to do that, and he's done a whole bunch of things to try to now get that deal, but he continues to fail after having promised Canadians that he'd get it done. But when it comes to the media, one of the greatest injustices that will do to Canadian democracy is not allow the media to see what these ministers might sign off if they employ.
Resuming debate.